This is Living Power with Dan Hurst.
Now we get into where we left off last Sunday, and that the fifth characteristic of an undisciple is that an undisciple is a deceptive liar. A deceptive liar. In John chapter 8, verse 44 and 45, you are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, referring to the devil. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell the truth, you don't believe me. Now, this is the simplest, most effective way to determine if you're an undisciple. Do you lie to get your way? Do you lie to get your way? Even if it's small lies. You know, we love the white lie terminology because then it makes us feel not so bad about ourselves. I just told a white lie. Whatever that means. Now listen, if you're a liar, you are out of God's will. Can anybody deny that? I mean, we all know that. We know that if you're a liar, you're out of God's will. But where does lying come from? Well, 1 John 1:6 says that if we say we have fellowship with him while we walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. So, lying is the result of being out of fellowship with God and walking in darkness. It's kind of a combination. It's being out of fellowship and walking in darkness. Now, the problem with walking in darkness is that you get to a point where, because you can't see the truth, you begin to believe the darkness. You begin to believe your own lies. An undisciple is living a lie that he may believe because he's out of fellowship with God. So because he's in the darkness, because he can't really see the truth or see what really is around him, he just begins to believe what he can see, and he believes the darkness. And he follows and trusts the darkness. And he is in the darkness instead of seeing what is really there. Now, the word for darkness that is used here in this passage here in 1 John is the word skotos. And what it means is, it means moral or spiritual gloom. Either one, moral or spiritual gloom. It's a reference to being in a moral or a spiritual condition that you know is out of bounds, but you continue. In other words, you're walking. There's motion. You are continuing on in that spiritual or that moral gloom. What about if it's not a moral or an apparent spiritual issue? What if you're not you're just not out there you're out there sinning and living in the gutter? What if it's like you're sugarcoating it and you look the part like you're really spiritual, but it's not, it's a little deceptive? What about then? Where this is so dangerous is when Christians find themselves in positions of responsibility. Now listen to what I just said. I didn't say leadership. Leadership is certainly included in that. But you don't have to be a person of leadership to have responsibility. And so this is really, really dangerous when people are in positions of responsibility and they get so tunnel vision on what they're doing that they begin to interpret and define their ministry through the eyes of their responsibility instead of interpreting their responsibility through their ministry, their calling. I want to explain this. There are an awful lot of people, Christians, who are in positions of responsibility. They have responsibilities either in the church or in certain ministries or whatever the case may be. And they're so focused on their responsibility that they begin to interpret ministry in the light of their responsibility instead of interpreting their responsibility in the light of the calling that God's given them. And so then the responsibility becomes more important than the ministry. Their responsibility, what I've got to do here, the thing that I'm doing is really, really important. I've got to do this. And if anybody else has a problem with it, then they're unspiritual. And so it gets all cattywampus on them, and they're backwards about it, and they're living a lie because their responsibility is more important than their ministry because they've interpreted it that way. So it's dangerous. A person who is an undisciple can live a lie because they're living in the darkness and don't see the clarity of it, and they're not letting Holy Spirit illumine that and give them the reality and the vision to understand where they are.
On behalf of Dan Hurst and the Open Class, we want to thank you for watching. We hope it was a blessing.